I want to begin this morning by putting in a good word for all the people among us and around us who are managers of one kind or another. Aside from maybe teachers, I'm thinking that managers are the hardest working people I know. Right? And there's a really special place in my heart for the person who has on his or her name tag at work, assistant manager. Back in our old church in Indianapolis, one of our church members was the assistant manager for the Burger King that was around the corner from the church, there on Washington Street, just off Sherman Drive. He was the assistant manager. We would go there to that Burger King often after worship on Sundays, and there would be Jim Hooser, not Hoosier, but Hooser, working away, worn short-sleeved shirt, grease-stained tie. He'd smile at us, greet us, chat with us for a moment, but then he was back to supervising or reprimanding or encouraging or assistant managing in some way, while we were having a good time eating our Whoppers and talking about church. I think of managers, and I think of my friend Ronnie, who worked on the assembly line at Allison Transmissions for almost 50 years. Quality control, taking transmissions apart and putting them back together every day on his feet for 50 years. It was hard work, I know. But Ronnie used to tell me about how the managers in the company would have the hardest time. They were the ones who sat in the offices that were suspended above the floor of the plant. And they would come and they would go because they had to manage their way between the workers and the people who held the power. And it was hard work to manage. There was always compromise involved, and nobody ever really felt like they got a fair shake. What is it that they say? A person who stands with one foot in a bucket of ice and the other foot in a bucket of steaming hot water is not, on the average, comfortable. Managing is hard work. Hat tip to all our managers out there. Every year, some of us have the luxury, really, of going down to Bethany Beach for a retreat. And we have a great time down there, but it's only because of Timothy, the camp manager, who's at the beach too, but is busy preparing our meals and cleaning them up and making sure he stays within the budget. Managing, hard work. Last Monday evening, it was maybe around 7:30. It was dark outside. We were on our way back from a soccer game, and we decided we needed some celery for dinner. We had some leftover shrimp and leftover chicken, so we were going to make chicken salad. That's the editorial we, by the way. We're going to make chicken salad. You have to have celery to make either of those two things. So we were there just to get the celery in and out. It was dark, so it was hard to see at first in the parking lot there at Shoppers around the corner. But as we got into the parking lot, this guy came running straight toward us, just to the right of the car. Running, I don't mean jogging, I mean running straight towards us, pushing a cart full of groceries. All bags of groceries, a cart full. And there was a guy behind him who was running just as fast and looking over his shoulder every now, nipping at his heels. They were screaming through the parking lot toward the exit with a cart of groceries that was packed full. About the time the two made it to the exit of the parking lot was when we saw, guess who? Chasing valiantly after those two athletic shoplifters. You know who it was, trying to run down all those groceries. It was the manager. Had on his yellow shopper's shirt. Suffice it to say, he was not in as good a shape as the shoplifters were. When the two turned the corner and left the parking lot, they could start walking again. Because by that time, the manager had given up. I'm telling you, it's hard work to be a manager. Which is a long way of saying, I don't know about you all, but I'm siding with the manager in this story of Jesus. Even though the byline in the Bible, in the New Testament portion of your Bible that you were reading along with Gregory, says the parable of the dishonest manager, nope, I'm not going there. After seeing that middle-aged man chasing after those two young sprinters across the parking lot like his life, or maybe more appropriately, his job depended on it, I'm on the manager's side. I'm here to tell you, being a manager is hard work, and you don't need me to tell you that. So let's not be too quick to judge the manager in this story of Jesus, and let's maybe even do one more thing. Let's imagine for a minute that Jesus, in his original telling of the story, is also asking us to identify with this manager. Because as we all know, being a manager is hard work. You have to manage all the time. The story of Jesus is introduced in a way not unlike other stories of Jesus that are about money. He begins it by saying, there was a rich man. There was a rich man. There was a rich man is a pretty common way for Jesus to begin a story like this one. And when Jesus begins a story like this one, there was a rich man, the rich man is typically not going to be the hero of the story. Next week, we are going to hear a story that begins, there was a rich man who dressed in purple and fine linens. Spoiler alert. Things are not going to turn out well for this rich man. Do you remember the story about the rich young ruler? He wound up being very sad because he asked about what he needed to do to inherit eternal life. He'd done all the commandments, done all that good stuff, and he said, that's right, just one more little thing. You got to give away all your money to the poor, and then you're in. The rich man was sad. Rich man is Jesus' shorthand for people who are not only rich, but who are also enamored of their possessions. And the title rich man is often used by Jesus as something of a foil to highlight the opposite of what he wants his disciples to do. And so in this story, the rich man, he hears just a rumor about charges made against his manager. And so the rich man summons the manager, calls him into his office, closes the door behind him so there will be no witnesses. The rich man sits the manager down, looks him in the eye, and says, your services are no longer needed by our company, and fires him. The rich man doesn't ask the manager his side of the story. Rich man doesn't give the manager a chance to defend himself. Rich man doesn't make sure someone else is in the room. He says simply, what is this I hear about you? Give me an accounting of your management because you cannot be my manager anymore. That's the long and the short of it. Based on what I've heard, the manager says, you are fired, says the rich man. This company is no longer in need of your services. Your belongings have been collected in a cardboard box while we've been meeting. The passwords are all changed on the computer you've been using, and I am now going to escort you out of the building after you give me your keys, please. This experience is difficult, but it's not that unusual for managers. This happens, right? This isn't the surprising part of the story. This kind of thing may have even happened to some of us, or most of us, or maybe even all of us. We've spoken that same question uttered by the manager that day he was blindsided at his boss's office as he was walking towards the car that he still has 2 years' worth of payments to make. What will I do now? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm too ashamed to beg. What will I do now? Can't collect Social Security till I'm 62 and I'm only 56. What will I do now? I haven't kept up with the most recent software. So what will I do now? I haven't had to prepare a resume in 25 years. What will I do now? I have 2 kids still in college. What will I do now? What will people think when they see me wiping down the tables at the Burger King like the one I used to manage? What will I do now? That firing, that conversation, and that question, they're all hard, even though they happen all the time. The surprising part of this story, the Jesus part of this story, is what happens next. Where the dishonest steward, the supposed squanderer who has mismanaged his owner's whatever and has been relieved of his position, he says, I have a plan. I know what I'm going to do. And he puts in place plan B, if you will, that for some inexplicable reasons, many people have called dishonest. Others have called shrewd. I think it's brilliant, especially coming from a squanderer. This manager figures out how to land on his feet with all the people he's been working with over the years so that they'll welcome him when he comes knocking on their doors for the new job he's about to try and get. And he figures out a way to make some money for the guy who just fired him. He goes to everyone who owes the man money, cuts a sweet deal for each of them, allows them to save face, puts money in the rich man's pocket. This squandering manager figures this all out in response to getting fired. And the rich man commends him. He does not hire him back because he's that kind of rich man. But he commends the dishonest manager for figuring out how to get at least some of his money back. So this is kind of a crazy, enigmatic story. I've been looking at preachers' blogs all week, and they've all been wondering, what in the world do we do with this text? And it is a little quizzical. One big hint is that Luke has Jesus telling this story to the disciples. Sometimes Jesus tells story to the general public or to Pharisees. This one is to the disciples, which probably means that Luke was wanting the disciples of his day to know that it's okay to be shrewd and creative with money. Giving away all that we have is certainly one message that's in the Bible when it comes to money. But since none of you all are going to do that, right? I don't think I am either. It's good to have this story with this message, that generosity can also be about being shrewd and creative and maybe a little wise. Our financial advisor can be a good partner to the pastor when it comes to generosity. Jesus wants his disciples to get this lesson. But like I said before, I think the other point of the story is that all of us are really the manager here, figuring out how to put our lives together, pleasing these people over here and these people at the same time, doing our jobs, messing up occasionally, squandering every now and then, getting it wrong and then getting it right. We're all trying to manage our lives. But the point remains the same. We do our best to manage, and then things happen that are out of our control. And so it's always a good thing, says this story, to have a plan B. It's always a good thing to ask ourselves questions like, what would I be doing if I weren't doing this? What do I wish I were doing now instead of this? What would I be doing if I couldn't do this? How might I get closer to what my real heart tells me to do by doing something else? And what about this question? How might doing something just a little differently make me a more generous person and help me figure out how to give myself away? Plan B. What kind of plan Bs are out there for us? It might not be a bad idea to give those plans some thought before we need to. Because eventually, you know it as well as I do, we will all find ourselves staring at a cup of coffee while we're sitting at the kitchen table on a Monday morning that we normally would have been going to work. Or sitting in the parking garage with what used to be our desk in the back seat of our car. Or reading through the nice cards we received at our retirement dinner. Or even putting together the crib for that new occupant in the house. Or maybe moving the last child out of the house, the time is coming for all of us, if it hasn't already, when we will be posing this question to ourselves. The question of the manager. Okay, what will I do now?